And good morning, everybody. Today is the 21st day of the month of Iyar. It is the 10th day of the month of May. Some people call it Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, and hello to all the rest. We are currently in a book called The Art of Giving. We are on page 46 in that book, and we have just completed a very long and drawn-out introduction that took us up to heaven and back and a few more times to each different way. And basically he talked about the way the energy of God comes to this world is a systematic and so-called filtering system where the energy is divine and holy and godly and therefore infinite and totally removed from anything that this world would look like. And eventually, after many levels, traveling up and down through the different worlds that God created in order to get to this world and to create the world that we have over here. And that is all indicated in the verse, the first verse, which deals with Sarah's death. And Sarah was a certain age, and her name, and all of that indicates this godly level energy that comes down to this world in order to create the world as it is. And the purpose of this was to give us an understanding how sublime the Torah is. The Torah is from the highest of those levels, and that was given to us in order for us to be connected to the highest of levels. When a person studies Torah, when a person toils in Torah, that means really into it and studies it the way you study Torah, the way Torah is meant to be studied, one is connected to an infinite level of God, because then one becomes privy to the deeper levels and the deeper layers that are prevalent in the Torah, because it's from God, and everything coming from God, directly from God, is obviously highly spiritualized and divine. So that's the first introduction to the idea of giving tzedakah, which is what the original point of this whole book is. What is the idea, what happens, and what's the goal, and what is the issue when a person gives tzedakah. And tzedakah means charity, giving to the poor, to the unfortunate, whatever. The second, top of page 46, the second, it's missing the word introduction, because in the Hebrew, the first word in the Hebrew is v'hakdama. The hakdama means an introduction. Beit, number 2. So the second introduction, I don't know why it's missing that word. I spoke to Rabbi Solish, incidentally, whose name appears on the top of this book. It says, introduction by Rabbi Ari Solish. And he said, please, I only wrote the introduction. So I said to him, I said that you should pass along to the author that I have found several places over here that are lacking. And even those that are here seem to be less thorough than the other ones that we've done. This is a more recent one. Anyway, so here's one example. The second, it should be the second introduction, the meaning of tzedakah. The second mystical interpretation examines the deeper etymological meaning of tzedakah. Etymological, for those who want to understand it in English, it means how words are connected and affiliated with one another. So how from one word you can say another word. So if you say, bring me some wine, and just don't whine, you see, that would be not quite, because that's spelled differently. But whatever it's called, but etymological means how words are affiliated, associated with one another. That's the play on words type of thing. That's etymological. That's a fancy way of saying that. So, the mystical interpretation of tzedakah is the deeper etymological meaning of tzedakah, concerning the giving of charity for its own sake, which in Hebrew is lishma. That means you're not giving charity so your name should be on the wall. You're not giving charity so that you should get a letter for taxes. You're not giving charity because people should know how wonderful you are with your money and everything else. You're giving charity because it's a mitzvah to give. If they put the plaque on the wall, they're putting it, but that wasn't your intention. Your intention was to do the work and do the giving, the art of giving, just because it's a mitzvah to give, for the purpose of the giving. So, concerning that type of charity, the Zohar. When we've heard about Zohar in the last few days, because the Zohar is statements. Let's talk a little bit about the Zohar. This is a good opportunity. The Zohar is on the Torah, on the 5 books of the Torah, and it goes according to the portions of Torah. It's missing 3 or 4 portions. The Zohar is comprised of 9 books, 9 smaller books that were all compiled into the Zohar. These books were written in different times of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and these were Torahs that were taught by him and by his group of Kabbalists. Let me turn on the Do Not Disturb app, which is one of the best apps you can ever get.
It's not an app.
It's an app. No, it's an app. I downloaded it.
You don't have to.
I did, because I have situations where the phone doesn't stop banging.
My phone has it without an app. Apple's an app. Yes.
Those are for people who keep on getting disturbed. Apple are disturbed people who buy apples. Anyway. The same kind of people who put ketchup on their hot dogs. These are people who go to Shea Stadium to watch baseball. All right, so Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a Talmudic scholar, a Talmudic sage, one of the holiest people this world ever had. And we spoke about him on Thursday night for those who were at the picnic. For those who weren't, where were you? And we had a long talk about him and the story the stories that are connected. I can't go through those stories now. If you weren't here, you'll have to wait till next year. Lag BaOmer, which by the way is also on a Thursday evening. A little bit later in the month. It's not early May. It's later May, because next year is a leap year, so Passover is later. Anyway, so Rabbi Shimon was a very, very holy sage, and in those days, Talmudic times. I'll turn off that. There's no water left in the hot water?
There wasn't.
In those days, the Kabbalah, the secrets of the Torah, were only given to very select people. The Rambam, Maimonides, who lived 1,000 years after that time, writes in his Book of Laws that these kind of things are only given to very select individuals, maybe 1 or 2 in a generation. They are secrets, and they're called secrets for a reason. They are to be passed along, but they are secret. It was only after Maimonides' time that the Zohar became a public book, that people were able to purchase it. And in the 13th century. And at that time, which is why some people argue and say, well, the Zohar is not from Rabbi Shimon, it's made from some anonymous, mysterious 13th century person. That's incorrect. It was revealed at that time, because everything comes at the right time. And then they started having private, secretive studies of the Zohar. It would take place usually on a Thursday night in a basement with candles, by invitation only, in the dark kind of thing. Nobody knew anything. Then, in the 16th century, came along a great sage by the name of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. We know him as the Ari, or the Arizal, which is an acronym of his name. And he lived in Spain, and he was taught all these secrets, all based on the Zohar. And then he was told to move to Safed in North Israel. He moves over there, and he is introduced to a group of Kabbalists, all of them great on their own merit, and they all immediately accept him as their Rebbe. He was only in his 30s. They were all great sages, much older than him. And he spent 2 years, and he wouldn't write a thing. He had a student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, who wrote everything down. And there's books and books. He taught about incarnation. He just exploded in information, all based on the Zohar. He taught the Zohar. He said, "This is what the Zohar is really saying." He gave the secrets over. For an example, one time he had a nap for 2 hours, and his student Chaim Vital noticed that his lips were moving the entire time. When he woke up, he said, Rebbe, what was that? He says, when I went up there, when I went to sleep, I went up to a world that I'd never been to before. And they taught the secrets over there that were. He says, can you share something? He said, it would take me 80 years of physical speaking to be able to share with you what's going on. And I can't do it. I don't have that time. After 2 years, at the age of 38, some say 43, he died. Before he died, he asked of his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, to bury all the manuscripts with him. He's buried in Tzfat, and when we go to Tzfat next year, we will be at his gravesite, together with all of his students are all around him. Then Rabbi Chaim, later on, after he passed away, about a week later, asked in a dream if he could retrieve his notes. And he was given permission to do that, and that's how we have his notes. And one of the things that he did say was, the time has come to start revealing this, the Kabbalah. And it became much more prevalent, although it was still very secretive. And then when the Hasidic movement came along, when the Baal Shem Tov came over 300 years ago, that's when it started to become more revealed. And as the Hasidic movement moved further, it became even more. Till this day, that it's just, you get it in English, you can get it online, you can, Kabbalah is a studied subject, as long as it's studied by those who follow the Kabbalah, not by those who simply academically giving you Kabbalah. That's the Kabbalah of Madonna and that ilk, which is, it's nothing. It's really not anything. So if you want to buy a Kabbalah book, check with me. And if you don't have me around, or I'm not giving myself around, I'm somewhere else, then look at the author and see if that author is a person who follows Torah and the Torah's commandments. If not, they have zero legitimacy. Zero, not even a half of them. They have nothing. It's totally meaningless. Why am I knocking that? Why am I so strong about this? Because I've met with many people who have bought and spent money on this, and then I've read through the book, and the book is it's nothing. I'm telling you this not because I know these people. I don't know who they are. I don't know who the authors are. But the Kabbalah Center and all those type of things are really not legitimate, because academic Kabbalah is not real. It's like saying somebody wrote a book on math, and he was a very well-known scientist. But I mean, he knew some facts and figures from 8th grade. But okay, why waste your money on that? It's just not. It's not what it is. It's not what it's supposed to be. So Rabbi Shimon was teaching very, very selective groups of people, and all of these were Talmudic sages. They're all mentioned in the Talmud as well. But these were also Kabbalists. And there are many stories there. Many stories about, and we're talking about, it's as legitimate as the Talmud. These are Talmudic sages. There are many stories that happen over there. And there are many lines there that sound very mysterious. And there are books upon books upon books just on 1 or 2 lines there. So it's compiled of 9 different pieces, of 9 different books, if you will, put in the order of Torah portions. One of those books, which we spoke about on Thursday night, is called The Small Meeting. It was the meeting that was intended to be small for Rabbi Shimon's passing. He gathered together wanted to gather 3 people, ended up with 10 people, and he shared with them the words of secrets that were being revealed to him on his final day, about which he says, it's written in the Zohar, and this is the day that I feel most close and most unified and most tied up with God. And on Shavuos night, it is customary to stay up all night and study, right? So it's Saturday night, 2 weeks ago from last night. Anybody wants to come in?
2 weeks ago from last night.
2 weeks coming from last night. Did I say 2 weeks ago from last night? That was a long time ago. And so, in this, for those who don't sit and study Torah, because what Torah to study, there is a little compilation of a book that's not available in English, and I'll explain in a second. It's a book of stuff that you say on that night. And the stuff that you say is the beginning and end of every single Torah portion, of every single book written of the written books, and of every single volume of Talmud. And then you have parts of the Zohar, and then you say the 613 commandments. That in and of itself, if you're saying it very quick, takes about 20 minutes just to get through it. And this thing will take 2-3 hours to say it. And you can't get into it because it's just the beginning and end. First 2 or 3 verses of every portion. Before you get into it, you jump into the next issue. It's not really about comprehension. It's not really about studying. It's about saying. And the reason we do that, Chabad does that, and other Hasidim do that as well, is because ultimately the giving of the Torah around Sinai, the 10 Commandments and the rest of the Torah, was about taking it, accepting it, not about understanding it. The first thing was give it. Let's see what it is. Let's just go through it. And so they don't want you to understand too much. In it, you have a lot of other bits and pieces. Like, for example, the description of the giving of the Torah is in this. You do read that. And the Haftarahs, the whole book of Ruth is in this. And big sections of Tehillim because of Psalms, because King David wrote it. Anyway, in that you also have the Zohar, and that part of the Zohar, which is said before he passed away, is in this compilation.
Dear, you're beautiful, dear. Oh, he's beautiful. Oh my goodness.
Oh no.
We have to,
Mother's Day lunch.
Every day, every shrub. He's looking for the garden, I think.
I hope he doesn't find it.
oh dear.
Usually they come in families.
She's probably pregnant, this one. They have their babies a little later in the summer. They are very graceful. They're here every day.
Yeah.
Every day, yeah. And then the babies will come through as well.
The same place or?
Yeah, they go throughout the entire. They go along the yard and then out into the woods.
Okay, I have them in my backyard all the time.
That's where it came.
We don't have any valuable things of it. It's just leaves.
It's amazing.
But look how cautious they are. They can hear every little thing, including as soon as you start talking behind closed windows. On the other side, they're ready.
Yeah. That doesn't mean they'll go away.
No, they'll go. They won't go until he sees or she sees. All right.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to say what was in my mind. So the Zohar is also a part of this Shavuos night, the night of the holiday. So I always offer anybody who wants to come here at midnight to start studying until 4 in the morning. For some reason, I've never had any customers on that time. I'm not sure why. It's a Saturday night, so it's a late night. So, I mean, it's not like I got to get up tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock is late for you? Oh, we're just getting started at 10 o'clock. All right. So that is the Zohar. The Zohar is a cherished treasure, but it's very difficult to study because you can read it and it's just, oh, interesting, but you don't really know what's going on over there. There are dozens of books written by the greatest of Kabbalists throughout the generations who have written translation, because it's all in Aramaic, translation, and then explanation, and depths, and it's like an endless book. It's one of those kind of books, so there's no end to it. And there's so much based on it as well. So that is the Bible of the Kabbalah. That's like the essence. And everything else after that is based on that kind of thing. So now let's go back. What does the Zohar of this week's Torah portion, because it's Bechukotai, that Bechukotai is this week's part, it's the second of the double header of this week. This week is 2 portions together, as we've had experienced in the last few weeks. We've had double headers here. And this is the last one for a while now. But we have 2 portions, the second of which is the end of the book of Leviticus, the end of the 3rd book of the Torah. That's this week's portion. So the Zohar Bechukotai 113b explains, Tzedakah awakens tzedek. Tzedakah means charity, and tzedek means
Justice.
righteousness or justice. tzedek usually though is translated as justice. And so tzedakah, when a person gives tzedakah, it inspires justice, causing them to bond together as one, for only through tzedakah can tzedek be complete. Now, of course, again, as this is a perfect proof how the Zohar is very, here's your line, what does that mean, and what is going on over here? I understand that tzedakah and tzedek may be connected, but you haven't explained anything. The Zohar doesn't go into explanations. It relies on the teacher to teach it. That's how Kabbalah is. The word Kabbalah means to receive something. It's receiving from a higher level. So it wants the teacher who receives all of the information and the secrets to teach it, to forward it, to enhance what you're reading. So what does it mean? To explain. The verse states, and this is in Ashrei. The Ashrei is Psalm 145, and it goes according to the alphabet. Ashrei is Aleph, Bechol Yom is Bet, and Gadol Hashem Mahol Ma'od. And then when it comes to Lamed, it's Lehodia. Every verse is a different letter in the alphabet. The Ashrei is a very, very, very important part of prayer. In fact, the Talmud says whoever says Ashrei 3 times a day will not burn in the purgatory. And we say it in our prayers twice in the morning prayer and once in the afternoon prayer. The afternoon prayer begins with Ashrei. So it's said 3 times a day. Every day, every single day, no matter what day it is. It's in the one praise, all the prayers, it'll be 3 times. And the Lamed verse is Lehodia Livnei Ha'adam, Lehodia Livnei Ha'adam, Gvurah Shavach B'Hadam Malchus. So those who were in shul yesterday had the opportunity to sing those words and say those words. And those who weren't, well, hopefully we'll see you next week. Anyway, so it says, Lehodia Livnei Ha'adam Gvurotav, to make known to man his mighty acts, which is Gvurotav. Uchvod Hadar Malchuto, and the glorious majesty of his kingdom. Again, to make known to man his mighty acts, that's God doing everything to make known to man his mighty acts, and the glorious majesty of his kingdom, that we should also be know the glory. So his acts and the glorious majesty. He uses those 2 expressions to inform us that God did this and that and the other in order for us to know his mighty acts and his glorious majesty. Those are 2 different things. Mighty acts is a mighty act, and glorious majesty is not about might, it's just about glory, it's about splendor, about beauty, about kingship, about royalty, or whatever. Like this obsession with this woman who had a baby and called her Charlotte, who lives in England, and they called her the princess, and blah, blah, blah. Like,
She is a princess.
okay, and therefore, princess of a different country for
People are
For what?
so obsessed with that.
yeah,
Fairy
that's
tale.
exactly what I'm talking about.
Live fairy tale.
I'm not sure what I wrote a whole good Shabbos email about this when they got married, and 1 billion people watched it, or 2 billion people watched it. People bought hats and whatever, and I wrote. I think the expression I wrote in the Good Shabbos email was, this was before I was even here. What do we say? How diddly? What's the expression there? Huh?
Diddly do?
Something like that. Yeah. Oh, diddly do, or something. I don't know. Whatever. Why is that? Why is it important even for the people who live in that?
It's where you came from.
Oh, I came from Brooklyn, New York, sir.
You spent more years in.
Some people are excited about baseball, and some people are excited about princesses.
No, not in Brooklyn, no. Yeah, but I was only there for about 12, 13 years. I was out.
That's what you want. It's not excited about. Let the blend.
I don't.
It isn't.
I'm not criticizing people who are excited about it. I'm just questioning what is the excitement. I don't understand it. I just don't get
That's why
it.
you're not excited.
Right.
They are.
The whole royalty thing is an obsolete
Yeah.
Right, but
issue So it's just more tradition, celebrate Father's Day, Mother's Day,
Yeah.
and you got a king and a
And they
queen.
enjoy
For that country.
Yeah,
But it's not
That's because we don't
I
have.
find it amusing. That's why I
That's
just,
because we don't have kings and queens.
Right.
and we
It's
don't want
different.
kings and queens either.
No, it's
We-
different.
Somebody in the White House thinks he's a king. Anyway, but
we got kings.
who's that?
Referred to.
Called
Who?
president.
Reagan? No, it wasn't Reagan. Washington didn't
Mr.
consider him
Obama thinks he's a king.
big time.
Bush. Kennedy.
Who? Which Bush?
I think he's
W?
him and his wife.
All right, I'm not going to argue. So we should have been obsessed with him and his wife and his children, his daughters, and
No, I'm not saying we should be. I'm just saying.
I-
if somebody
I don't
gets
understand.
excited
That's
about it, that's why you don't.
Some
that's
people
why you're
don't
not
understand
excited
why
about it.
people are excited about.
I don't know why you're excited about
and
the
World
Yankees.
Series.
So you know,
Exactly.
there you go.
you know why? Because they are the kings of baseball.
There you
There you go.
There you go.
And this Prince playing.
Exactly.
Anyway, so the bottom line is that
As they say in Brazil, every monkey in its own branch.
Exactly.
There-
Yes.
there's a king of Spain and a queen. There's a king of so many different countries. They have kings and queens. Most of the monarchs are not.
They're not as
They're not-
pretty.
Oh, okay. Now I get it. All right, let's move on. So, royalty. The reason why why royalty is okay to have, is because it gives us a glimpse into all these royal, majestic descriptions in biblical terms and in the prayers and all that. It gives you that when the Tsar was overthrown in 1817 by the Bolsheviks, and then the communists took over and destroyed that whole country. When that happened, the Tsar was destroying people, but he was very, very happy that the country would be rebuilt. But the communist system destroyed everything. Anyway, but the bottom line is that the Hasidic people at that time were lamenting it. Not that the Tsar was our friend, and not that the communists were our friend. Nobody has been our friend anyway. But they complained because their royalty had been completed, and Hasidism uses royalty a lot, as does from the Bible, to describe God all the time. And so how are we going to remember that? So in that case, I guess Buckingham Palace can help us out. All right, so the verse explains again. The verse states, to make known to man his mighty acts, gevurotov, and the glorious majesty of his kingdom. The mystical interpretation is that prior gevurot and tzimtzumim, gevurot means mighty, tzimtzumim means contractions. It means might, and it is a reference to contractions. Why? Because to hold back, you've got to really use strength. If you want to hold the water back, you've got to build that concrete wall that is, So, prior gevurot and tzimtzumim of the divine light are essential in order for the glorious majesty of his kingdom to spread forth and for his innumerable troops to be created. And we'll finish this paragraph. Since finite light is required to create finite worlds. So what he's saying here, what he's saying is as follows, and we won't have enough time to get through this. So the first idea is that in the series, in the sequence of creation of the world, and we discussed this in the previous introduction, there needs to be a contraction, needs to be removing of the great divine light. Without that, you can't have a world the way we have it over here. God wanted to create this world. How do we know that? Well, because he did. And this is the end of everything. Not just did he want to create this world, it's this world that was the end result of everything he did create. he created everything in order to get to this world. If not, then this world would have either been in the middle of something, and it isn't, it's the end, or this world wouldn't be here. He wouldn't have gone so far. But the idea, the purpose of creating of all of the worlds, whatever's up there in the other worlds, all the spiritual angels and everything, is so that he should get down to here. This is the end of the journey. This is the final stop. This world. Why? Because this world, you have people achieving and earning what they have. It's not a given. With angels, there is no challenge. They're always angelic. They're always good. Why are they always good? Because they were created without any challenges. They were created to be only good. But this world was created as a place where you don't see God in its full glory. You don't see God at all unless you really look for it. With people who have evil in them. There's a lot of evil around in this world. In fact, the Talmud describes it as more evil than good, if you just let it go naturally. But people are given goodness to them. And their goodness is supposed to overcome the challenge. And in that case, we earn what we get. So throughout history, you've always had people who have invented things, worked very, very hard, toiled. You've had people who've toiled their entire lives and couldn't invent anything, and then a guy comes to the next generation, and within a second he's got it, based on usually on what's happened before. And that's how this world works. And then you have people who are challenged with whatever challenge God gives, and it could be a bad thing, a kleptomania, they like blood, they enjoy this, they enjoy that, whatever it is, and can be harmful to other people, and they overcome it. You have people who are addicted to something, and they stop being addicted, and we treat those people as very strong people, and we hardly could even imagine what they had to go through in order to get to the point that they got to overcome their challenge. They may not be harming anyone other than themselves, but that addiction is a harmful thing, and they overcome it, and we are very grateful when we meet people like that. These are heroes. Or people who came with $5 in their back pocket, and they became very wealthy, and not just wealthy, but they also became philanthropic, and they cared about people, and they remembered their roots and where they came from. They never forgot the way, These are heroic people. Why? Because they earned it. And anyone who is good in what they do, it didn't happen automatically. They had to earn it. People had to work for it. People had to achieve it. And that is a great thing. And that's the purpose of this world, to overcome the obstacles. It's not easy to achieve. The Talmud says that if a person says, I toiled and I was unsuccessful, don't believe that person. If a person says, I didn't toil and I was successful, don't believe that person. Only the one who says, I toiled and I was successful, that's to believe. What does that mean? I didn't toil. I toiled and I was unsuccessful. You cannot be unsuccessful if you really are toiling for something. You may not get the end result that you thought, but there's no such thing as non-success. Even the toil itself is part of the success. The person who says, I didn't toil and I succeed, well, if you would have toiled, you would have succeeded a lot more. So what kind of success is that? I earned $1 million, but you could have earned $5 million. So why did you stop? Because I didn't toil. Oh, well, and that's not success. If you are able to achieve more and you don't, then you haven't been successful as you could have been. You haven't utilized all of your talents and all of your abilities. Only the person who says, I toiled, I worked hard, and I succeeded, that's the person who is true. Because that's what God has in store for us. And some of us have to toil really hard to achieve whatever it might be. Some people have learning issues, some people have physical issues, some people have mental issues, some people have emotional issues, some people have this and that and the other. That's what makes up the world. And each person has his own package of issues that happen throughout our lives. And we all ask for more time to live. I'm going to talk about this on Rosh Hashanah. I'm beginning to prepare my Rosh Hashanah sermons. I'm not kidding. This is where I usually start. And one of the points I'm going to make is we're asking God for a new year, For more time. To do what? What do we need more time for? To go through the same motions again, go to the same place to work and go home to the same house and just do the same thing over and over again. What do we need to do this for? What are we looking forward towards? What's the goal here? Anyway, to be continued much later this year. Oh, in fact, next year. Anyway, so the idea here is that you first have many mighty acts which are to withhold, to hold back, so that this world can become. Only after that can God project his glorious majesty. The glorious majesty can only come as a result of these mighty acts of this withholding. And whatever that means and whatever more this implies, we will continue next time, next Sunday.